Hey, what's going on, you guys? Hey, welcome back to another episode of iTrack. Big shout out to every single person that has just tapped in, man. Hey, on today's episode, we're going to take a look at how the U.S. plans to handle the issue in the Middle East, and also take a look at a religion that is based around saving the world from nukes. Interesting, right? So we're taking a look at that along with a lot of other interesting clips. But before we do any of that, do make sure to smash that like button for me, hit that hype button, and smash that subscribe button if you're not a part of the iTrack fan, man. Let's go ahead and get right into it.
Even if the U.S. pulls out of the Iran war in 2 or 3 weeks, that would be longer than President Trump's original timeline. I asked him what else has to happen between now and declaring victory. Trump said, quote, "Not much. We want to clean up some ends, but we have done our job."
We'll be leaving very soon.
President Trump said the U.S. continues to negotiate with Iran, but will soon be done with the war.
I had one goal. They will have no nuclear weapon. And that goal has been attained. They will not have nuclear weapons, but we're finishing the job, and I think within maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days.
In a phone interview, I asked the president if removing the enriched uranium that remains in Iran, a critical component to make a nuclear weapon, is a requirement to declare victory. Trump said, "I don't even think about it. That's so deeply buried, it's going to be hard for anybody." Trump said it's possible Iran will make a deal in the coming weeks, but added that is not necessary for the U.S. to end the war.
They're losing. They admit they're losing. They're begging to make a deal.
Earlier Tuesday, the president said reopening the Strait of Hormuz is up to other nations since they depend on Gulf oil far more than the U.S. "I'm not a gatekeeper for them," he said in our interview. "Countries have to come in and take care of it."
They'll go right up there and they'll be able to fend for themselves. I think it'll be very safe, actually, but we have nothing to do with them.
Iranian restrictions in the strait have caused gas prices in the U.S. to spike by almost 35% since the war began.
All I have to do is leave Iran, and we'll be doing that very soon, and they'll become tumbling down.
I actually contemplated on live streaming that, but as you can tell, it's about as interesting as watching paint dry.
During a blessing at St. Peter's Square in Rome, Pope Francis unexpectedly finds himself performing a public exorcism on a deeply troubled individual. The crowd is unaware of what is about to unfold, and even Pope Francis seems oblivious to the gravity of the moment. The man in the wheelchair is Angel, a 47-year-old Mexican father of 2, who claims to have been possessed by demons since 1999. Despite the efforts of 10 different exorcists, each attempting to rid him of his demons over 30 times, he remains tormented. As the Pope lays hands on him, the outcome is striking. As you observe closely, Angel's face twists and contorts in agony, as if the demon within him is boiling beneath his skin. The longer the Pope maintains contact, the more uncomfortable Angel appears. When the Pope finally releases him, Angel immediately slumps over, a look of tranquility washing over him. But is this the result of a genuine demonic force departing, or simply the power of suggestion?
No, Buddy looked like he was possessed. It looked pretty obvious.
On a real rabbit hole, we're going to Turkey. Turkey has some of the wildest stuff on the planet, hands down. Who makes it? Look at this. This is Ecological. I'm probably butchering that name, but does that not look like a pillar to you? Like a giant pillar? That's huge. Look at the boat. There's a rock-cut monastery that you can go inside, just like the one in Ethiopia. When you go inside this one, it's decorated head to toe like a cathedral. Turkey is ancient. We have megalithic architecture and rock-cut temples in Sorna, the city of oracles, and the ancient theater of Side rivals the Colosseum in Rome. It's insane. Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe are also in Turkey. These two push civilization back 5,000 years from what we thought. They were buried really fast, like something was happening outside. The fact that every ancient culture has a flood myth would make Darren Kuyu make sense. It's an 8-story underground city with locking doors, water access, and air vents.
The world is so crazy right now. Netflix is testing a new feature that pauses your show and plays an ad after it detects that you've looked away from the screen. There is a proposal being reviewed right now to collapse all the time zones in the US into one. The representatives pushing this are saying that it's going to reduce confusion. A new study just came out saying that those who are doom scrolling consistently every day are generating enough body heat to be qualified as light exercise. Apple just quietly updated their terms of service to say now that any idea that you have while wearing AirPods is theirs. Google Maps just added a new feature that takes you down the most aesthetically unpleasant route. An archaeological excavation last month just uncovered an ancient race of skeleton people. Southwest Airlines just announced that they are phasing out complimentary cabin pressurization, and TSA is trying out a new $49 opt-out from body scanning. You also have to sign a waiver confirming that you are probably fine. This map shows what a new proposal looks like to make the United States just 2 states. There's a land bridge that goes in the middle to connect to make sure that it stays this way. A new bill was just introduced requiring all AI-generated content to be followed up by a 3-second pause so that us humans can emotionally process it. My name's Adorian. Follow me to stay in the loop.
I just want to know how many days, weeks it took to set up these dominoes, man. Just to knock them down in a 10-second video. This is crazy. They built the Eiffel Tower of dominoes out there. Let's watch this thing collapse, man. Let's see it. Wow. No lie, however long it took, worth it.
Video of a meteorite falling on the moon has become a hit on social media, and this is an object lesson in astronomy. There is no atmosphere on the moon, so meteoroids do not burn up like on Earth, but crash into the surface at full speed, forming craters. That's why the moon looks like a battlefield. Every blow leaves a mark.
Since there's no atmosphere on the moon, they want to have people visit the moon. They want to have a whole civilization up there. It sounds like they have a lot of work ahead of them to even create the atmosphere, or even make it habitable for groups of people to be up there at one time.
Forget the time iPhone sent out this message to every single person in Hawaii that said ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. When it was in fact just a drill. And the worst part was that it took 40 minutes for the mistake to be corrected. And of all people, Jim Carrey happened to be on the island at the time and confirmed the story by saying he thought for almost an hour that he was gonna die. Apparently a worker was supposed to send a test message in their group chat, but accidentally sent it to the entire state, and obviously he was fired.
Most people don't know that the sun is hurtling through space around the supermassive black hole in a way that, if you think too hard about it, if we are just actively falling into a black hole at every single point in time. In physics, we call orbits like free fall, because technically we are just always falling all the way around. So like the International Space Station, it is technically just freely falling all the way around the Earth constantly. But because it's going sideways just enough, it just goes in this nice little perfect circle.
Every single member of Congress who's gone into a briefing has come out saying holy on the Keeping It Real podcast with Jillian Michaels. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who's leading a House push for declassification, described this as the reaction for lawmakers who've seen classified UFO, UAP briefings behind closed doors. Do you think this upcoming disclosure can change everything we know about our reality?
When they asked Steve Jobs, boy, your kids must love the iPad. Steve Jobs said, my kids don't have an iPad. And then his biographer, who spent time with his family, said he wasn't kidding. There's no technology. At dinner, they're talking about art and history.
But yet and still, you want to feed the whole world this technology, huh? That's madness.
Something big is happening between the US and Europe right now. Donald Trump is now threatening to leave NATO after multiple European allies refuse to get involved in the war. In fact, some are now actively pushing back. Italy just denied landing rights to US warplanes trying to arrive at one of their bases in Sicily. Spain have not only denied US access to their bases, but are now also denying overflight rights to any of their aircraft involved in attacks on Iran. France have now blocked certain American planes from crossing their airspace, which were carrying military equipment bound for Israel. And now, in retaliation, Israel announced that they are halting all weapon imports from France. Keir Starmer addressed the UK public today, stating emphatically,
"This is not our war. We will not be drawn into the conflict. That is not in our national interest.
NATO member Australia, their Prime Minister also addressed the nation today, saying,
Australia is not an active participant in this war, but all Australians are paying higher prices because of it.
And even China have got involved for the first meaningful time, calling for peace and even presenting a 5-point peace plan to try and end the war. But the response to all of this has been fierce. Trump has lashed out at US allies, saying you'll have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA will not be there to help you anymore, just like you weren't there for us. And then he told The Telegraph that he's now strongly considering pulling the United States out of NATO. And to give you an idea of what NATO would look like without the United States, not only did the US spend more than any other NATO country, but it spent more than all other NATO countries combined. He said that this decision was beyond reconsideration. He then scheduled a primetime address to the nation from the White House on April the 1st. So NATO and Europe are facing a dilemma. Either play nice with the US or fend for themselves without their support. What do you guys think is the right decision?
Have you ever heard of the saying, damned if you do and damned if you don't? That 100% applies to this. It just kind of seems like everybody's going to be winning and losing at the same time.
Have you heard of this prediction that something is going to happen this Easter Sunday? So you've probably heard of Chris Bledsoe, but if you haven't, this is his story. In 2007, he was on the banks of the Cape Fear River in North Carolina when he had an encounter with orbs, glowing beings, and a UFO. Chris lost about 4 hours of time that day and came out with his severe Crohn's disease mysteriously gone. NASA, the CIA, and even the Vatican went on to investigate him about his abduction experience. Then in 2012, Chris had a vision. A being that he calls the Lady appeared to him and told him that on Easter Sunday 2026, something would happen. When the blue star Regulus in the constellation of Leo aligns with the Great Sphinx in Egypt, just before dawn and appears red, a new knowledge would come to the world. That aliens will reveal themselves and humanity will change forever. She also told him that this would happen in a time when Israel and Iran were exchanging missiles, and that when that happens, orbs will rise up out of the ocean to stop the conflict. Bledsoe told this to his contacts in the government almost 15 years ago. And look what's happening now. And what's really interesting is that the Space Force has a logo, this one right here, depicting the Sphinx on the globe and a bright star above it. Is this depicting the event that the lady told Chris about? Now, this is real. It was created in 2022 as part of the intelligence unit, Space Delta 18, at Wright-Patterson, arguably the most UFO-connected military base in American history. And it's also been reported that government remote viewers were tasked with looking at this date. So what do they know that we don't? Drop your theories down in the comments.
Now, if that whole Easter Sunday premonition comes to pass, we might need to reconsider a whole lot of things that we thought we knew.
Sorry in advance for this one. What the hell's wrong with people, man? In July of 2023, a 31-year-old man identified in reports as Mr. Liu was admitted to a hospital in China after experiencing severe abdominal pain, sweating, and signs of infection. You probably know where this is going. Doctors discovered he had inserted a live eel into his, which then forced its way through his rectum and colon. The eel used its sharp teeth to bite through his intestinal wall, causing a perforation that allowed bacteria and fecal matter to leak into his abdominal cavity, triggering life-threatening peritonitis. CT scans showed the eel moving inside his abdomen before surgeons performed emergency surgery. During the operation, they found the eel had punctured through the colon and entered the abdominal cavity. The eel was removed and the damaged sections of intestine were repaired, while surgeons cleaned out contamination to prevent further infection. He survived after intensive treatment, but doctors noted that without rapid surgical intervention, the injuries would have quickly led to organ failure and an extremely painful death.
The United States went to war in the Middle East to protect what's called the petrodollar system, the most powerful system on Earth. And there's a theory that says the US may have accidentally or intentionally started the process of destroying it.
We are facing a real shock that is probably beyond what we can imagine at the moment.
And what we're seeing is what some people are calling the end of Pax Americana.
History in the future will look back at the year 2026 and mark it as the beginning of the end of Pax Americana. No matter how you define Pax Americana is coming to an end.
Okay, so right now, there is 6 countries in the middle of this chess match over basically the thing that runs the entire world, which is energy. And depending on how the next few weeks play out, we could be looking at a couple different outcomes. And before I explain what they are, I just want to set the stage for what's happening. Because the reason all of this is pretty bad is because it's happening at the worst possible time. Because interest rates, for example, have been high for longer than most people have expected. And that's been breaking things in the economy. For example, there's a $9.4 trillion shadow banking system called private credit. Companies like Blackstone, Apollo, Blue Owl, all of which lent money to businesses and pension funds and everyday retirement accounts. And now, investors want their money back, and the system can't return it. Which is also why those private credit stocks, which are also some of the biggest financial institutions in the world, are collapsing in terms of their share price.
Hey, there's nothing more creepy than the slow death of a society. BlackRock and a lot of other gigantic financial institutions don't want to give people their money back. This is very worrisome and definitely red flags.
This one's kind of fun. So you see that weird shape kind of moving across the screen back and forth? If you pause the video at any point at all, you'll see it stop for a second and then it will vanish into the background. You won't be able to see it anymore. Now this isn't a camera trick or anything I'm doing. It's just your mind making a camouflage with the background because it looks so similar. And if you start it up again, you'll see it again. And again, if you pause anywhere, it'll just vanish into the background.
Hey, it absolutely vanishes into the background. It's pretty wild. Hey, check it out for yourself.
Something slammed into the moon so hard that it somehow erased more craters than it created. And scientists never even knew that it happened. So NASA just found a brand new crater on the moon that is 225 meters wide, about the length of 2 football fields. And somehow, nobody even knew that it happened in the first place. But here's the part that is actually insane, because this thing hit so hard that it sent rock and dust flying over 120 kilometers in every direction. That debris was moving at over 1 kilometer per second, which is faster than a bullet. And then all of that material landed on top of the surrounding terrain, burying smaller craters that were already there. So this one single impact created a brand new crater, but it wiped out dozens of existing ones underneath a blanket of debris. NASA officially stated that a crater this size only forms once every 139 years, which means that we just witnessed something that's not going to happen again in obviously a very long time. And obviously the wildest part is that NASA is currently trying to send humans to the moon, but this thing just hit with zero warning. So we are going back to the moon and things are just slamming into it without any warning at all. Cool, cool, cool.
Greys, I believe, are avatars. They're meat suits. The demons need something to inhabit. They either inhabit a person, an animal, or an object. Demons, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, need something to manifest in our dimension, whether it be a person, an animal, or an object. Are the tall lights, which are part of UAP, UFO lore, very tall, they kind of float around, is that what a fallen angel really looks like? Because they have been out of the presence of a living God for millennia. And have they atrophied in some sense? They can't be killed because they're immortal beings, but have they atrophied? I don't know. Does an angel get some of its sustenance just from being in the presence of a living God? I don't know.
These creatures looked exactly like this. They are the type of alien creature that has been known and feared throughout Africa for generations. This creature is about 3 feet tall. It looks for all the world like a child who is on the last stages of dying of malnutrition. It looks exactly like this, and it has a strange smell, which once you smell it, you shall never forget it. This creature is known by the Zulu-speaking people of South Africa as a mantindane. The word mantindane comes from the verb ntinda, which means to abuse, to fiddle with, and to torture by interfering with the victim's genitals and other private parts. Zulu warriors used to wear a strange cup-like device over their private parts under their loinskins. The Zulus were so afraid of having their semen stolen by the Mantindane that they found this type of inconvenience acceptable, rather than that they should face the trauma of having things done to them by these beings.
Now, for every man that understood what he just said, that sounded completely terrifying.
1 in every 3 bites of food you take is pollinated by bees. And I have some bad news for you, Pookie. Between June of 2024 and March of 2025, beekeepers in the US lost 62% of their bee colonies. Some lost 70%, some lost 100%. Almonds rely entirely on bees. They can't get pollinated without them. Apples, blueberries, cherries, avocados, coffee, cucumbers, the hay and the alfalfa that the cattle eat to give you your beef and your dairy, all of that requires pollinators. And scientists have been trying to tell us for decades that the bees are fucking dying. A large reason for this is the varroa mite. It's a parasite that climbs into the bee larva and then it feeds on their organs and then spreads disease to the entire colony. And they used to use a pesticide called amitraz to combat this, but the mite is resistant to it now. In fact, every mite collected from bee colonies in 2025 was resistant. Scientists have said that they have an urgent need to figure this the fuck out, but they haven't yet. And it's already affecting your grocery prices, buddy.
This is security camera footage. So you see towards the end of the street here a shadowy white apparition form and move down the street just a little bit before dissipating into nothingness. So let's look at that again. Now, the way the figure forms, it kind of looks humanoid. You can almost see legs like it's walking, but then again, it starts to kind of morph and form into this little shadowy thing that moves down the rest of the screen. So if we go back, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go frame by frame here for just a second. The way that it forms, it does appear to form and come out from behind the pole and the light there. So let me fast forward just a little bit. And yeah, I mean, if you look, it does appear as though it's forming and coming behind the lamp as it starts to walk down the street or move down the street. And then again, once it gets about a third of the way down the street, it kind of morphs into this smaller sort of shadowy thing that moves down the screen the rest of the way. You can see there. Very interesting. Very interesting. Kind of a creepy clip. Somewhat compelling, especially there at the beginning, the way it's moving right there. It does look like it's walking. I mean, you can even kind of see the legs moving and it bobbing up and down, and it as if it's following the street and walking down the street. I don't know. It's an interesting and compelling clip. But I want to know in the comments down below, what do you think about this clip? Do you think that this was a apparition caught on camera walking down the street before morphing into a kind of shadow ball and following the rest of the way down the street? Or is it as easily explainable as a bug in front of the camera lens? Let me know what you think in the comments down below.
Oye, sí, parece una esfera. A ver. El lobo del Vive, ¿no? Ah, no, esta madre del cártigo. No, sí, mira. A ver. Ahí va, ahí va. Jaime Maussan. No, mira, sí es una esfera, ¿eh? No me lo van a creer. Gente. Ching, ya valió madre, ya se fue.
This machine will soon turn the ocean into the world's biggest power source in sustainability.
I mean, if it's sustainable and it works, I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't mind.
You know that fruit flies were the first living creatures to be sent into space? That's right. On February 20th, 1947, fruit flies were put on a V-2 rocket and launched from White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico as a part of a research mission. While there were flights into space before this that may have accidentally carried bacteria and other forms of life on board, this was the first flight that intentionally sent living creatures. After traveling 67 miles into the air, the rocket parachuted back to Earth. I know you may be thinking 67 miles is not that significant, but according to NASA, the altitude at which space begins is about 50 to 60 miles. Therefore, fruit flies were the first creatures to reach the final frontier. The reason why fruit flies were chosen for this flight was to help scientists learn the effects of cosmic radiation on organic matter. Since fruit flies have a similar genetic makeup to humans, they were seen as the perfect choice to help research this. When the capsule returned to Earth, scientists found that the fly's genes had not been mutated by radiation. This paved the way for human spaceflight. More you know.
Hershey said that starting next year, it will use classic recipes for all its Reese's products. The Pennsylvania-based company also said it will transition to natural colors for its sweets. Hershey has faced criticism for using cheaper ingredients and less chocolate in its products.
Now, when companies come out and say things like this, I feel like somewhere in their mind, they feel like this is a plus for them. But in all reality, the real thinkers of the world are understanding that, hey, you're giving us less than your best and we're paying our hard-earned money for what?
I received this video from a listener who claims to have been having issues with Jinn and captured a strange shadow figure passing him around 3 a.m. after he had heard knocks on his balcony door, despite no one being there.
Well, this is security camera footage, and you see what appears to be a ghostly white apparition walk across the yard, proceed down the road, and it's moving pretty fast too, and start to proceed down the road. So again, you see this wispy kind of ghostly apparition, humanoid apparition, walk across the yard and start to go down the road, and then it continues around the tree and it's caught on a second camera. Looks transparent right there as it passes around the tree. That's what they're talking about right now. And then when they play the video again and it starts to walk down the street, you can see it does appear to be the same apparition, and it's moving fast and kind of unnatural. It is moving kind of unnatural, but you do see what appear to be legs. So we go back to the beginning. I mean, look at the way that it's moving. Again, it's moving fast. Like it's like a walk, but it's a fast walk, and just the way it moves is very unnatural looking, especially on the second part of the clip when we get to right here and you see it walk down the street and it's transparent and it kind of solidifies a little bit. It almost looks like smoke, like a humanoid smoke ghostly figure. But again, it moves fast and it moves in a really weird, creepy, kind of unnatural way. So I don't know what to think about this. It is very compelling though, and the fact that we have two separate camera angles, because one, I guess this person had two different security cameras, one pointed towards the side and one pointed towards the front. So they were able to catch it on the side camera, and then when it came around to the front camera, they were able to catch it there as well. But I want to know in the comments down below, what do you think about this clip? Is this authentic footage and evidence of ghostly apparitions walking around, or was it simply a person and a bad camera causing this effect? Let me know what you think in the comments down below.
Surveillance is at all-time highs. Here's a quick guide on how you can be safe, especially if you're traveling right now. Compliments of The Intercept. ICE is at the airports, and they do have the rights to confiscate your devices. So first, if you can, leave your usual devices at home. If you have an old phone lying around, now's the time to use it. But make sure you have a fresh account on it, not your usual Apple or Google accounts. Make sure there's nothing sensitive on that phone. This is wild to even say, but if a meme on your phone might offend someone, delete it. And if you can afford to do so, pop in a different SIM card with a different phone number. This is by no means an ad, but because I work in journalism, I actually use a wireless carrier called Freely. They're a privacy-specific carrier that doesn't tie your phone plan to your identity, which is pretty cool. Huge shout out to them. This is not an ad, but I'll cover them in a future video. Second, disable biometrics. No Face ID and no fingerprint ID, as annoying as that is. Somehow it's legal for law enforcement to force you to unlock your devices using those methods, but not the old school passcode. Passcodes aren't bulletproof. Make sure no cameras or people can see you entering your passcode along the way. And third, if someone does get into your device, make sure you have no sensitive apps that are installed or logged in. Once you're no longer in transit, you can reinstall those apps and log back into your accounts. I'm going to film a much more comprehensive video on how you can stay safe and vigilant in an era of mass surveillance in the US, but if you're traveling, definitely hop over to The Intercept to read their full article. I'm the founder of Interval News, and we're on a mission to highlight the stories like this from the smaller, independent publications, oftentimes pushing headlines that are either suppressed or outright censored. Much love to The Intercept for all their fantastic journalism. Stay safe while traveling, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Hey, you can never be too safe. It's better to have the information than to not have it at all.
You don't know this, but a religion called the Atomic Priesthood was created to save us from nuclear annihilation in the 1980s, and the story is wild. In the 1940s, people started to become concerned with long-term nuclear material storage and how dangerous it would be for future generations. The concern was that in, say, 10,000 years, if nobody on planet Earth speaks any of the languages that we currently speak, and they can't interpret images like the biohazard symbol in the same way, How do you label a nuclear waste site in a way that universally tells everybody for generations to come that they're dangerous? And so in 1980, the US Department of Energy contracted a team of anthropologists, semioticians, surrealist artists, and science fiction writers to work together to come up with a solution for how to warn future societies of the dangers of nuclear waste sites. The team, dubbed the Human Interference Task Force, came up with several interesting ideas. One of them was called the Landscape of Dread, where scientists and artists worked together to design a storage facility for nuclear waste that basically looked spooky as hell. Another idea was to design buildings that looked like they were crushed and destroyed so that people would think that they were unstable and dangerous to enter. Another idea was to create a specific breed of plant that only grew around nuclear waste, or a genetically modified breed of cat that glowed whenever it was exposed to radiation, and then embed these things into American folklore with nursery rhymes. Another was to just put up images of sick and dead people on the buildings. But for every single idea, they always came up with at least one reason why it wouldn't work. For instance, the pick 4 in a report titled Communication Measures to Bridge 10 Millennia. It was briefly considered, but then ultimately rejected because it was just incredibly impractical. They just kind of came to the conclusion that there was no solution and gave up. So we're just kind of screwed, I guess. But there actually is a dedicated DIY community, and in 2016, a new proposal based on CBOC's work was published in the Zygon Journal of Religion and Science by Sebastian Musch, calling for a new atomic priesthood to be established. And they're taking volunteers. And real quick, if you like my videos and you want to see more in-depth writing from me, you can do that here.
Note to self: mankind will make a religion out of anything. Why is there a church that worships Beyonce? Times are strange. Some things we'll just never know. I've seen it all. Well, you guys, that's another one in the books, man. I appreciate you guys for always stopping by, watching, and learning with me. If you haven't already, do make sure to smash that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button. If you're not a part of the iTrack fam, man, we're running this channel up to 200,000 subs by the end of the year. Go ahead and join up. Make sure to hit that hype button, and I will definitely catch you on the next one.